and we will follow up with posting them on our website at mass.gov/MCB next week. So please be on the lookout for those. My name is Carla Kath. I'm the Director of Communications at Mass Commission for the Blind. And again, all of you are joining us for our first virtual Caregiver Support Week. We recognize the essential role that caregivers play for our community of individuals who are blind and visually impaired. And today's topic will focus on children who are blind and visually impaired and offer ideas, supports, and resources for their caregivers. So with that being said, we will start with our presenters today. That will be the format, and then we will move to discussion portion of the event a little bit later. So we ask that you keep muted and keep your video off until the discussion portion of our event. And at that time, feel free to submit your questions to myself, Carla Kath. I'm labeled as Zoom host 1, or my colleague, Samantha Linden. She's labeled as Zoom host 2. And if you need any help during the event, feel free to send us a chat at any time. If you are joining via phone today, *6 will mute and unmute during that discussion portion of our event. *9 will raise and lower your hand. If you're joining via Windows device, it's Alt-A to mute and unmute, and Alt-Y to raise and lower your hand. And then via Mac device, it's Command-Shift-A to mute and unmute, and Option-Y to raise and lower your hand. And if you need anything else, again, please just send a chat to myself, Carla Kath, or Samantha Linden. But thank you very much for joining us today for our second event of Caregiver Support Week with Mass Commission for the Blind and our community partners here today from Perkins School for the Blind. All right, I think that's it. We have a great group with us, and Carlene Boyd, who is a social rehabilitation counselor at MCB, will introduce our presenters.
Good afternoon, everyone. And as Carla mentioned, welcome again to our first annual Caregiver Support Week. And for those of you who have already had the opportunity to join some of our previous sessions, welcome back. And as mentioned, the goal of this week is to really connect with our caregivers in the blindness community and be able to offer resources and support. I'd like to take this opportunity now to introduce our Commissioner, David Darkangelo, and allow him to say a few words. Commissioner?
Carlene, thank you so much for the great work you and your team are doing putting these events together. It's a robust week worth of events. So I appreciate you and everybody else from MCB, our team, facilitating here today. And welcome, good afternoon. It's great to be with all the caregivers and everybody in our community. Thank you for what you do to act as the village. Really, the old axiom, it takes a village, is so true. As somebody who's experienced blindness from an early age, I know how much I relied upon my caregiver community to support me. At many times, I didn't even know they were supporting me, but please know that we are a resource here for you at the Commission. This is your state tax dollars at work. So no matter what the question or comment or request, we can only fulfill it if we know about it. So please be in communication with us. Our team does a great job here. I'm so pleased to be with you. My door is open anytime. Please contact me personally if I can be of service to you. But I'm so appreciative of everybody for joining here today. And these are complicated issues, but it starts with communication. And a big part of what caregivers do is really help advocate for our consumers with blindness and visual impairment. So thank you again to everybody for joining. Please know you have a great team here working for you and our consumers. And again, please let us know if we can be a resource to you. Carlene, I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you all our speakers today from the Perkins School for the Blind. We have Brenda Allaire, Infant Toddler Coordinator and Teacher of the Visually Impaired, Courtney Westcott, Supervisor of Outreach Short Courses, Emily Lowenstein, Licensed Social Worker within the Infant Toddler Program, and Katie Teft, Social Worker also within the Infant Toddler Program. And Brenda, I'll turn it over to you to get things started.
Darlene, thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction from you and from the commissioner as well. As the coordinator of the Perkins Infant Toddler Program, I'm really happy to be joining all of you today. We're here to share a little bit more about the supports and services that Perkins offers to families and to children across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And so we're going to be talking a little bit today about several different programs. The social workers and I will talk a little bit about the infant toddler program, and then Courtney will share some information about the programs that we offer for children who are a little bit older. But throughout, we really want to share resources and just make sure that you're connected to us as a resource and as a community. I think that's really important. You know, we were talking about that village, and that's really a critical part of what we want to do. So our program, the Infant Toddler Program, provides services to children across Massachusetts that are ages birth to 3 who have a vision impairment, or if the family or providers have a concern about their vision. So in order to be part of our program, children do not have to have a diagnosed vision impairment, just that there might be a concern for their vision. Most of the children that we see are referred to us through their early intervention programs, but we do have many parents who refer on their own. And we certainly have physicians, ophthalmologists, neurologists, and many of our community partners who also refer to our program, including MCB, when children are connected there first. And we will make sure to share the link to that referral form in the chat later on. It is available on our website under the Infant Toddler Program. Our program right now consists of a team of 17 teachers of the visually impaired, our 2 social workers, myself, of course, as the coordinator, and our program director, Terry Turgeon, who was not able to be here today. We offer home-based services pre-COVID. Right now we're doing telepractice, and we will of course be moving to a hybrid model where we'll be doing both telepractice and in-person as things progress and safety allows for us to do that. We also offer parent-child groups. Traditionally, those have been taking place on our campus in our classroom with 2 teachers of the visually impaired and then social workers who facilitate a parent support group. We are doing a model of that virtually right now, where those happen via Zoom, and that's been different but very effective. We have a music therapist who joins us and does some really fun activities with the children and parents. And then Katie and Emily, who you'll hear from a little bit later, who facilitate really some dynamic parent discussions and offer some resources and supports for families. The teachers in our program, we really focus on parent coaching, which is a model that really honors the family as a child's first and best teachers. And we also recognize that all parents benefit from guidance and support. And so our role really is to support families as they learn more about their child's vision impairment and support ways, to help their child's development across all areas. The children that we work with are enrolled in early intervention. And so we work very closely with the child's early intervention team. And we help those therapists and providers to understand how vision impacts all areas of a child's development, and really to partner with them in creating the best possible interventions and routines for that child and family. We're very focused on, working within what the family's needs are and what the family identifies as their own concerns. So this isn't where, we don't come in and tell families what to do. We're really coming in to support their own goals and ideas for their own family. Our teachers also work closely with other caregivers that might be in a child's life, which could include daycare providers, grandparents, nannies, nurses. We meet with a lot of different people. And one of the sort of silver linings of having to do this model by telepractice has been our ability to meet and work with, more often other family members. We've met a lot of grandparents, which has been lovely. We also know that we've had more participation from dads who traditionally haven't been able to be as involved. Sort of the traditional format, we just happen to be meeting more with moms, but it's been wonderful to meet with parents and to really share their experiences and give them some information. So really, we know that family support is the heart of what the infant toddler program is about. And some of the ways that we work towards that goal, again, we help families understand their child's eye condition. And so, the families that we see are generally speaking in early stages of getting a diagnosis. We may be attending eye appointments with them. We've been able to do that virtually, which is wonderful. And we can help families understand kind of what is the medical information, but also what is the impact of that vision impairment. And again, we help families connect with MCB if they haven't already been, and that's something that's necessary for their child. We want to make sure that children have all of the agencies involved that are important for them. And, we know that MCB offers a wide variety of supports and services to families, and that connection is really critical. We support families in accessing adaptive toys and materials. So through our own program, we have a toy lending library. It's a wonderful resource for families where we have a variety of all kinds of different toys and materials that that families might want to explore with their child. We have switch toys. We have just adaptive materials. We have some very tiny preschool canes for children who might be exploring that as an option. And then we also have our Adaptive Device Center, sort of affectionately known as Molly's Workshop on campus. And this is where we have occupational therapists who work at Perkins along with volunteers who really build and design adaptive materials for children. And in our program, often that's specialized seating and a little table for children for a workspace. We know that children work best when they're well supported. And so that's something that we can support families with. But we also look at what might children need in order to better access some of their own toys and materials. So things like slant boards. We have some really fun play materials that we work with children. And so those are great ways to help families kind of get started thinking about adaptive materials. We know that as children with vision impairments move into their school settings, they might require some adaptive design or modifications. And so this is a nice introduction to that. We also work on, helping discuss the child's visual impairment and helping parents be able to discuss that vision impairment and their own child's specific needs. We know that as children move out of early intervention when they turn 3, we want those future teachers and perhaps classmates to understand that child's vision impairment. And we want parents to be able to advocate on their child's behalf and to know how to communicate their child's needs to future team members. One of the things we also do is support sibling relationships. And so this isn't something that gets talked about, as often, but we know that many young children have siblings, or perhaps cousins or other relatives that we want to make sure that we're supporting those appropriate peer interactions. And so we can help families identify opportunities for shared activities. One of the wonderful things we've been able to do, I currently am working as a TVI with a set of twin boys, very adorable little set of boys. And we have created an adaptive table for them so that both of the boys can participate in some of the activities that we do. They can sit and face each other and play together. And that's been really wonderful to build their relationship. We also help families find really age-appropriate ways to discuss the vision impairment with siblings, or perhaps additional disabilities that the child might have, and to be able to talk about that in a way that helps other people understand and to be comfortable with interacting with that child and really just help facilitate normal and typical interactions. We also know that families come to our program at all different levels of understanding and that every family has their own unique needs. I'm a parent of a child with a vision impairment myself, who attended the infant toddler program and parent program many years ago. But I do remember my own experience of speaking with the social worker on that very first phone call and learning about Perkins services. And I was both very excited to learn that there were supports and services for our family, and really hesitant about accessing them. I was worried about what that might mean for myself, for my child and family. But I can tell you that one of the most important things I've ever done is to meet other parents who were on the same journey as I was. And for my child to meet other children who were like her with a vision impairment. That was really important for us as a family, and it's been important for her own experience as a person with a vision impairment. But I often say she doesn't remember being at infant toddler group, but I certainly do, and remain connected actually with many of the parents that I met through that experience. So we hope that we'll share with you today some more information about our programs, some resources for you as parents and caregivers. And we would like to make sure that you can always reach out to Perkins with your questions if there's anything we can do to help you along the way. I'm happy to be joined today by the social workers in our program, Emily Lowenstein and Katie Teft. Our social workers work very closely with families during the initial intake process. And of course, they facilitate our parent support groups. And they're here today to share more about the resources and supports that they know families have found helpful as they participate in those activities, and hopefully things that you as caregivers might find useful. So Emily and Katie, thank you.
Thanks, Brenda. So one of the things that we wanted to touch on first, and Brenda kind of touched on it, talking about, all parents come in with different, understandings of their child's visual impairment, is, communicating that with loved ones, whether, that's, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, an older sibling, or even, just some of their friends. So some of the things that, we find really helpful for parents, and parents have expressed back to us that are helpful, is figuring out what's right for each family individually. And in that, finding out what is right for each parent individually. So, if you come from a 2-parent household, each parent might, kind of feel comfortable sharing different things about their child with different people, and that's okay. The other thing is that it might take longer and more time for, different caregivers to express those things to different people. So that's something to talk about, if one caregiver isn't as comfortable with sharing certain information, are you guys going to share that information or hold it back? And there's no right or wrong answer with that. It's all, individual on a family basis. Also, when talking with families, once your child is old enough to, communicate with others, allowing them to communicate with their family members, about some of their things about their visual impairment, and also expressing to those loved ones that you're talking to talk to the child and not about them, especially when they're old enough to kind of give you those answers back. We talk a lot about with our family milestones, and for some parents it's really hard, and for some parents it's a grieving process that your child might not go through all those typical milestones that your friends' families or their cousins might be going to, but we really try to share with all of our families that every child, no matter what, goes through milestones. So they might look different from their sibling or their cousin or their friends, but every single child is going to have a milestone. And one of the ways, families can express that is, focus on the can and the will. So just an example of that, sharing with a family, instead of saying my child cannot feed himself like his brother, expressing it that, my child can feed himself when he uses this adaptive spoon. So, they're still being able to feed themselves. It just might not look different. And then, not being afraid to make mistakes when talking about your child to family and loved ones. You know them best. And so it's okay to make mistakes or, kind of share something and have it come out wrong. It's really your comfortable level. So that's kind of something we really talk about a lot with our families. And again, that goes to siblings and, loved ones and, those parent friends. And then we are going to share some resources with you. So as Brenda shared, we have the infant toddler program at Perkins, and we'll put the referral form in for that and a little bit more on our website. And then we also have the community programs at Perkins, and that is for, the older students, which Courtney is going to share more about their programming, kind of what they do there. Another Perkins, resource is we have a website, and it's at perkins.org/CVI-now. And that is a CVI website for kids who are diagnosed with CVI, but also, families who see those things in their children, more than welcome to access that website. It provides information on CVI, parenting resources, as well as some family stories from families who have kids with a CVI diagnosis. There are lots of Facebook support groups, hundreds really. I could go all day with sharing them, but there's some, such as parents of blind and visually impaired children, toys for blind and visually impaired infants, toddlers, and children. There is, if you live on the South Shore, there's South Shore Special Needs Parent Support Group. So there's all kinds of different support groups on Facebook to join. Some are for resources, some are for parents to connect. There are some for parents who their kids have gotten older and they are selling or giving away adaptive toys and materials. That's another great resource. There is Lowell Association for the Blind. So that is youth and adult services. And they provide social, educational, recreational activities for kids and families on the weekends. For kids who want to be involved in sports, we have Waypoint Adventures and CHD, which is mostly based in Western Mass, but those are also great, resources for adaptive sports for kids. They offer all kinds of sports, so that's really fun. And then we have some others that have really great newsletters to be involved in to kind of get up-to-date things. So there's the Federation for Children with Special Needs, FCSN. So they're a really great newsletter to sign up for. They provide information for parents of children with special needs, but they also put on events, they put on talks, they have support and assistance. There's the New England Consortium of Deaf Blindness, NEC. So those are for, families and children who have a child deaf blind. And then we have another great newsletter that comes out, weekly, is the Greater Massachusetts Special Needs Events. So that kind of takes all of these resources that I just talked about and puts it all into one newsletter and kind of shares what events are going on in the state of Massachusetts. So ranging from, infants all the way to adults. It has all different range of events. And right now they're putting in the virtual and in-person events. So those are really great, shows you where to sign up and all of that. And then of course we have Massachusetts Commission of the Blind, MCB, which we work with a lot and a lot of our kids are enrolled in. So some of the kids who come to Perkins are enrolled in MCB already, and some we work with them to enroll in MCB. So they provide a lot of advocacy, case management, information, referrals to other resources, whether that's referral to Perkins or another resource that you guys as caregivers might be interested in for your kids. Those referrals to MCB, though, are submitted by your eye doctor. So if you guys are not enrolled in MCB, talk to an eye doctor about that, and they can provide that referral as long as you meet their requirements. And another great thing about MCB is they are your services for life. So you might have a different, case manager depending on your age, but they stay with you. And it's voluntary. So, if your child's vision, gets better, you can drop the services. If you just feel like it's a lot in your life right now, you can drop the services and come back. So it's really fluid with their services. They also provide income eligibility and funding. And one of the reasons, our families love to use it, especially going to that transition between preschool or between infant toddler and preschool, is the advocacy that MCB provides. So when kids are birth to 3, they have what's known as an IFSP. And when they go to preschool, they transition to an IEP. And that can be, a challenging and difficult time for families, just because it's something you don't go through unless you have a child that's transitioning those ages. So they can kind of advocate for your child to make sure they're getting all the services that they deserve and they need to get there. And so that is kind of the MCB. All of our other resources, I can see some of them going into the chat. I will add some that, were missed. And then, Courtney is going to share a little bit more about our community programs for those kids who, are older and out of our infant toddler program.
Thank you, Emily. So as Brenda kind of introduced, she had mentioned that she is a parent of a child with visual impairments, and they began in the infant toddler program. And one of the things we really value in community programs is that our program is sort of a continuum. And so families and children will begin in infant toddler, and then there'll be that little bit of a gap period where they're figuring out initial school stages and whatnot. But then when students turn 7, that is when they're eligible to come and participate in outreach events. And for many parents, they're like, my 7-year-old child is not going to actually go and stay away for a weekend. They haven't even been to grandma's house. But it is a really nice place. And we do try to plant the seed while the families are still in infant toddler, just so that they're aware of what is available in the future. Where can my child go to learn different skills, and where can I, as a parent, go to learn skills and or performance of my child? So with outreach short courses, we offer a variety of year-round extracurricular residential opportunities for public school students who are ages 7 to 22. And our students are blind, visually impaired, multi-impaired, and deafblind. And our programs are typically weekend, well, again, pre-COVID, our programs were weekend programs. We would run about 2 a month, and we do programs during the school vacations, and we do programs during the summers, and a couple other times throughout the year. We have also done pop-up events where we go out to different places around Massachusetts or surrounding communities just to try to engage the families and really, share information about what our program is and how your child may or may not benefit, as well as the parents. It's really amazing how much a parent can learn about themselves once their child is not home for, 1 or 2 days, and it's a big change. But we really pride ourselves in supporting the whole process to make sure that families are comfortable, that the students are comfortable, that all of the information is given ahead of time. And, for a lot of them, this is the first time they've been away from home. They may have never stayed at grandma's house or an aunt or uncle's house or a cousin's house. And so they've only ever been in their comfortable environment. And so when we say, all right, come on down, let's start out with a weekend program, and your child's going to stay with us and this group of 8 to 18 children, also with visual impairments, who are in your child's age group, and they're going to work on meal prep and organizing their bedroom and maintaining their space and working with other students. It sounds like a lot, but the homesickness only lasts for maybe, for some, it's the full day. But usually after that introductory pizza night, the students are well acclimated and they're already making friends. And the social interaction skills are immensely important for our students. We want to give them the opportunity. Some of them are the only student with visual impairments in their school system or in their classroom, in their district. And so a lot of them, they're coming to Perkins and they're meeting somebody who is like them for the first time. And to be learning the same sorts of skills and the same sorts of adaptations is just so meaningful for us as the educators providing the services, but also for the children and then for the families, because the children go home and they might talk about, you know, I've done this, this, and this over the weekend. And parents are like, what do you mean you did all of that? And we like to say that, you know, we meet a different child when they come to outreach. The expectations are different, the supports are different, the education is different, because parents can only do so much during a day, right? The parents and caretakers, they have a schedule, they may or may not have other children, they have all of these scheduling conflicts that they need to pay attention to. And so we really full force share the fact that we can take 15 minutes to allow a child to learn how to zip their coat independently. Whereas when you're on the go as a parent, nope, you're zipping that child's coat up and you're going out the door. And so it's just different experiences and opportunities. When the kids come to the programs, they are typically themed, but the main premise of the program is the expanded core curriculum. And we just provide a lot of natural education throughout the time that the students can't access during a school day because, again, the core curriculum is what takes precedent. And so that's why the expanded core, those 9 elements of the effective education that children with visual impairments do need to ensure that they can become their most independent self, is really our our go-to manual. And so while the programs have themes to them, such as we've done, Girls Weekend or Harry Potter Weekend or Explore Boston Week, these are some of the different program ideas. But giving the students these experiences along with new or familiar peers, it just makes it that much more meaningful. You would be surprised how pride-filled and how confident, like you can just see the confidence in some of these students who have just never had some of these experiences, such as, cutting an apple or making your breakfast, things like that, that parents just complete as a natural occurrence. It's just what happens. And so when they come over to outreach and they wake up in the morning and we say, all right, what are you going to make yourself for breakfast? It starts a little confusion, but then they're all excited about it because they get to learn something new and they get to make their choice. And I think that is a really, really important factor, is that choice is huge. Throughout childhood, the parents are making the choices for the students. And so as they continue to get a little older, giving them options and giving them choices, it'll just allows for that inherent confidence to be built. And one of the carryovers from outreach, and we've definitely experienced this more so in the virtual world, is the ability to educate the parents, right? Because the parents are not the teacher of the visually impaired. And so we want to make the appropriate recommendations so that their homes can be set up for the student's success or the child's success. And so just talking about labeling your appliances, there are all sorts of tactile markers or high contrast markers that you can use to adapt your home. And that might just allow your child to do one step of a cooking process. If they can find the start button on the microwave just by feeling for a bump, then they're participating and they're learning one component of a very large skill that's going to impact them for the rest of their life. And so parents just don't think about it. And so that's why we like to reinforce the fact that we do have some of the resources and we want you to keep reaching out. And if you have a question or how can my child possibly do this? There's a way. There is a way for your child to do nearly anything, and it's just figuring out that different adaptation that is going to work for them. But for younger children, it might sound alarming to think that a preschooler could have chores, but just because your child has a visual impairment or additional disabilities, it does not exclude them from, participating in the day-to-day household. So we always recommend that starting somewhere, whether it is making sure that your child is putting their laundry into a hamper, or that they're putting their blocks away after they use them or when it's requested. Those sorts of experiences are going to begin to equip your child to become their most independent self. And those are just some of the aspects that we cover in outreach, and then we hope to be carried over into the home setting. Organization is key. If you have a place for everything and everything is in its place, then the child is going to be that much more successful to be able to access things on their own without having to either wait for somebody else to deliver them to them and or just not understand that they do have access to their specific items. And it can happen everywhere in the house. Your bathroom can have a specific organization system, your kitchen, your laundry room, your child's bedroom, all of the above. If you can have an effective organization system and that the child is aware of it, then they can begin to access those parts of their home as they begin to mature. And I think that's one of the big things that we learned through virtual learning. I can only do so much over a computer screen when I'm trying to educate a child how to use their skills, how to use knife skills or use their stovetop. And so the parents were key for the success of that program. But just for the parents to hear the different language as well. Like, oh, okay, like I could describe that differently, or I could allow them to clean up their own mess. Just sorts of things like that you don't always think about. To have somebody on the outside in a virtual setting giving those recommendations and whatnot, it makes the parent think about it too, right? How much am I doing for my child? Which parts of these steps could my child complete? And or when should I start to encourage my child to begin, experiencing some of these steps and whatnot? So it's a lot. It's lifelong learning, but we just really want to reinforce the fact that you are supported as parents and caregivers and siblings. And there really are a lot of resources out there in order to figure out how best to support your child while supporting yourself, while fostering independence. And you definitely do not have to do it alone in any way, shape, or form. So that's my gung-ho, my full force. If people have questions, or if people would like more resources or have specific examples they would like us to elaborate on, we are more than happy to do so. I will also throw my last plug in for MCB, which is the reason why we're here. But MCB and the relationships that we have built as an organization with them has only made the opportunities for both the students, the families, and the stakeholders that much more seamless. To have effective communication and relationships, it makes it all the better for everybody. So I definitely recommend getting your child registered and figuring out what the process is going to look like.
All right. Thank you, Courtney, Brenda, Emily, and Katie. We appreciate you sharing your wonderful insights and a ton of resources as well for our community. I was seeing the links pop up in the chat here and trying to collect all of those. And I know there are more. So when we post the recordings next week, we are going to collect all of those links and resources and try to provide them in one place for all of the caregivers with us today. But thank you so much. If anyone has questions, our presenters are here and willing to connect and answer those questions for you as fast as possible. So feel free to unmute for the discussion or enter your questions in the chat, or you can send them to myself. I'm Carla Caff, the Director of Communications at Mass Commission for the Blind, or Samantha Linden. She's our Director of Training, so feel free to send those over as well. And then if you don't have any questions, I wonder for our presenters, do you guys get kind of, what are some of the common questions that I know you answered several of them during your presentations, but are there any kind of common questions that you field on a regular basis that you could provide the answers to that might be helpful?
Carla, I think that's an excellent question. I'm sure Courtney and Emily and Katie have some thoughts on sort of the topics that rise to the surface. In infant toddler, I would say most families have a lot of questions about their child's specific diagnosis. So they want to learn more about what it means for their child. What can my child see? How will my child learn? And so we talk a lot in our program about that every child can learn. Every child is able. And so our job is really to work with families and to develop some new ideas on how to help that child learn what their peers are doing, and also to really just enjoy what they're doing with their families. And so we work pretty closely with families and with our community partners in the medical system, and of course with you guys at MCB, to help families really understand. They're at the very beginning stages, and so we're doing a lot of work around that. And then we also talk a lot about transition. So when children turn 3, they move out of our system into generally a preschool setting. And so we talk a lot about what might school look like? What does it mean to have a child with a visual impairment go to preschool? And really ease some fears there. Certainly I can say as a parent, the thought of sending my child to preschool when she was 3 was just very overwhelming. She, of course, was thrilled to go to preschool. I'm not entirely sure she even waved goodbye as she was heading out the door. And she has also participated in many outreach programs. I think connecting families with each other and connecting children and students with each other is really, really critical. And that would be kind of a major take home that I would say is you need a village as a parent, and your child needs a village as a child as well.
I think that's really great advice, Brenda, and that echoes what we heard yesterday from 2 of the caregivers who joined our caregiver panel at noon. And they said, very similar, that peer support and support from other caregivers was just critical throughout the duration of what, that they were dealing with as it changed over time. We do have a couple of questions for you. And one of them, of course, is related to what we're all dealing with right now, which is ongoing with COVID. But how are the programs happening now in the context of where we are with COVID? So I know that's probably different with all of your programs.
Yeah, so our program has been virtual since March of 2020. We have done a lot of virtual visits. We're at about 6,000 virtual visits since last March, which is quite a lot. It's been challenging in some ways, but certainly we are thrilled to be able to stay connected with families. Our parent groups are virtual, which has actually allowed a lot of parents to attend who otherwise weren't able to come to campus. We are getting ready to move into a hybrid, which would mean parents would get both an in-home visit as that's safe and continue with telepractice visits. We know that there's some things that are just really important to do in person, and we're excited to move back to that. But we also know that we've benefited and families have benefited from the telepractice. So that's kind of the model that we're in right now. Courtney, I know you are telepractice and also have recently had your first in-person session. So
yes. So of course, as everybody, once this all started, we were like, what are we going to do? What is outreach going to look like? And so, as Brenda said, connection is the biggest thing. And we just wanted to remain connected with our students, but also ensure they were remaining connected with each other. And so we quickly just began offering a wide variety of kind of like drop-in session activities that the students would participate in. We've completed numerous, probably at least 12 pretty extensive programs that were virtual that met anywhere from 5 days a week or 1 day a week for differentiated instruction. And so we've had cooking courses and a book club and social engagement and pre-work skills and all of the above. During the vacations, we have done just drop-in sessions, and that is where we have met a lot of brand new students, especially young elementary aged, because they're sitting at home and they just want to figure out what they're doing, and they're on vacation and it's COVID and all of these things. So I want to say that we met about 16 brand new students just with those open drop-in sessions. And they all had different ranges. They were music-based or literature-based or trivia, just fun and games. And so it was nice to have the variety. But yes, as Brenda said, we are planning to have our in-person summer programming, which consists of our 3-week program and our 5-week program. And it is for older students. It's for students 12 to 22. But in order to prepare for those programs, we did offer a partial week April break program just to kind of test it out and see how the procedures were going to go, how the space would go, and how the students would kind of react to being in the environment while it is so different. But they were thrilled to be back. They were ecstatic from start to finish. At the end of the program, they were asking if they could just stay and let's just finish out the vacation and things like that. So with that preview, I am very hopeful that we will have successful in-person summer programming this summer. And we pushed our dates back. So we're going to be going from the end of June into August. And while our numbers will be pared down a little bit, just so that we're ensuring spaces can be kept clean and sanitized and those things, through the April break program, I learned that it doesn't matter how many students are there. They can still make connections when they're as a group. And a lot of them preferred the smaller group of students. They felt as if they were able to connect a little bit better. So moving forward, I 100% know that virtual learning will remain a part of outreach. We had never done a book club before because book club doesn't necessarily align with our programming. And so to be able to offer a continuous round of book club, that's fabulous. We can engage the students. We're working on literacy skills. We're working on accessible book formats and all of those things. So I know that we'll go back in person. We want to definitely reinstall our weekend programs and the vacation programs and whatnot. But I think having that parallel of virtual activities for either those who aren't able to make it to the campus and or those who just want to participate virtually and not in the residential model. So that'll definitely be a constant with us moving forward.
All right. And Courtney, just while you're still on, we have a question. How long are the outreach programs?
So the weekend programs begin on a Friday and they end on a Sunday. It's usually like Friday evening and then Sunday afternoon. And then the week-long programs during school vacations typically begin on a Sunday and end on a Friday. And our extended summer programming goes for 3 weeks for our Skills Academy and 5 weeks for our World of Work experience. So those are our basic models. We do also do kind of 1-day drop-in events as well. And those are kind of more of like meet and greet opportunities. But we might do some sort of outdoor adventure or a walk, or in the past we've gone rock climbing, things like that. But our core programming for in-person has been that weekend, week-long, multiple week model. For the virtual, they've been a little bit different. We've been doing more so 10-week sessions that meet for one afternoon a week. And so the sessions are usually from 4 to 6 p.m. and they're either on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. And depending on the sort of program, parental support is encouraged for the cooking ones. But the book club and the other sessions, it can just be the student on their own with the group.
And Courtney, you have a spring session coming up, correct? The virtual session?
We do, yes. Thanks, Brenda. But we are doing a spring virtual. We're going to do 5 weeks of a cooking session, a book club session, and a world of work panel discussion. And so those are going to take place Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays from 4 to 6. The Mondays will be the cooking, Tuesdays will be book club, and Wednesdays will be panel discussions. And that is online right now. So you can definitely sign up if you're interested, or if your child just wants to kind of get a feel for what outreach is, then doing it virtually while they're in the comfort of their own home could be a perfect first step.
Okay. Got it. And this is a funny question. How young should you start chores? My kids would say I'm way too early. But I think it is a good question. How young should you start chores with your children?
We start talking about chores in infant toddler. I think we think of chores as sort of like a big task, right? When adults think of chores, we think of doing the dishes, and that's like a start to finish activity. But chores can be, we clean up our toys after we're done with them, or at the end of the day, you put your dirty clothes into a basket. So very simple things, and really it's building independence. And one of the things we talk a lot about, and Courtney and I have had this discussion before, is that kids with vision impairments tend to have a lot of things done with and for them. And they don't always get a lot of opportunities to be the one doing. And so we want to build that confidence and that sense of confidence that they are contributing to their home and they're contributing to a happy, healthy environment. And that will carry with them as they grow older. So while children might argue the point, and toddlers will for sure, cleaning up is a chore, and we encourage that.
And chore you could change the language, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be chores, but we're going to have family cleanup routines or, things like that. But it really is, we do encourage it as early as possible. And even when we tell the students and they're in a program and we're like, you can do this when you go home. And they're like, no, my mom does that for me. And, we try to help them with the language of, I am able to do this, so I could at least try, even though somebody else does it for me at home. So yeah, can go either way. Children usually aren't a fan, no matter what their age is.
Well, that's good. I'm going to share some of that advice and use it at home as well. So thank you. And then just one more question I think we probably have time for. Are there any tips about how to talk to a child's pre-K teacher about their needs?
That's a great question. And it's one of the things we really work a lot on in the transition process. And so if your child's able to help in that communication, I think that's a great learning opportunity for them. Even something simple like, it's easier for me if I sit, facing away from the windows. That's a simple thing that a child can learn to express. But if you are the one really communicating about your child's needs, I think getting your child's TBI involved. So if your child's been working with a TBI from our infant toddler program, certainly we can help facilitate that conversation, but also really looking at what do you do at home to help your child participate in activities and learn. And so if it's things like making sure you place items on a certain side, or if your child is using sighted guide or some sort of assistance in walking or moving, talking about those experiences, talking about whether you use Braille books at home or whether your child likes a certain color to highlight some of their materials. Thinking that's what we do really when we're talking with families about transition is, what do you do at home that we want to make sure gets carried over into preschool? And what does that teacher need to know to help your child learn best? So those are some of the ways that families can start thinking about that. And preschool is really, there's some academic skills that are happening there, but a lot of that is really learning to be social and learning to follow routines. And so if you start building those skills at home, that will help facilitate your child's sort of introduction into school as well.
It's great. And just one more, and we heard from caregivers yesterday too about the role that siblings play, and you guys mentioned that as well today. Are there any events that are just for siblings?
We haven't had events just for siblings, although we have talked about it. It's a topic that comes up pretty often. I know Katie and Emily have heard that in group. When we are running our in-person groups, our parent-child groups for infant toddler, we have invited children under 5 who are the siblings to come to group. And so they get the opportunity both to have sort of their own time to play, but they also get to see other children that are like their sibling, who are also engaged in activities and playtime. And that can be really helpful. Siblings might also feel alone in their experiences. I have 2 older children, and my youngest is a child with a visual impairment, young adult now. And so, you know, they did come to the infant toddler group sometimes. We did enroll them in some fun sibling only activities that were available at the time. There used to be a program called Sib Shops, and I'm not sure it exists anymore, but we can certainly look into that. But those kinds of experiences gave them an outlet, and that was really helpful for them.
All right. Are there any other questions from any participants? All right. If not, we will plan to share this recording and all of the resources that were shared today on our website at mass.gov/MCB. And those will be posted next week after Caregiver Support Week wraps up on Friday. And again, we do have events every day this week. So Wednesday through Friday from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And tomorrow's event will focus on adults with blindness. And we will be joined by Carroll Center for the Blind. And then also on Thursday, we will be joined by MAVI to talk about seniors who are blind and visually impaired. And then on Friday, we will be joined by Dr. Alexis Malkin, who is from the New England College of Optometry, to go over basics about blindness and how to communicate about blindness after a diagnosis. So hopefully you guys can join us again virtually or catch a recording next week at mass.gov/MCB. But thank you so much to our presenters from Perkins for being with us today. You all were fantastic. You're great partners to our team at MCB, and we are very thankful for all that you do for children and families in our community. So thank you very much, and everybody have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much for having us.
Wonderful afternoon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.